So yeah, let me just introduce myself. So my name's Catherine, and I'm a learning designer and NLP practitioner, and I'm one of the associates with Newmella, and I work quite closely with Wendy on the business innovation and NLP training. So we thought to put together a webinar to just talk about what is the connection then between NLP and innovation, because this is such a core part of what we do at Newmella, and I think it's what also kind of makes us quite unique, wouldn't you say, Wendy?
Absolutely.
So today we're going to talk about the role of the mind in innovation and think about what hinders innovation and how to think for it. Because once we understand that, then we can really understand how NLP is relevant to all of that. So we'll give a brief introduction of NLP and look at how that plays into innovation. So yeah, the mind is obviously central to innovation. We've got different parts of the mind, and it's in the neocortex that creativity really comes from. So when we want to innovate, we need to have that creative mind that activate that neocortex. So that's just one of the parts of the role of the mind. But let's look at this quote from David Allen. He said, "We notice only what matches our internal belief systems and identified contexts. If you're an optometrist, you'll notice people wearing glasses across a crowded room." So what he's saying is you only see what you choose to focus on. And what you choose to focus on is based on your programmings and your belief systems. And essentially, even all the way back to Aristotle, he said 95% of everything you would do is a result of habit. So would you like to just unpack that for us a little bit, Wendy? So what is the relevance of this for innovation? This, when our beliefs match, we only see what matches our belief systems.
Yeah. Well, there's so much relevancy for this, Kate. It's a matter of which angle do I take it at, right? And I was just saying to somebody this morning, you've got, your unconscious mind is like little duck feet that steer the direction of your life. So, it's what is fate and what is destiny, which you can go into an existential conversation about the difference, is that you've got to have the awareness of those duck feet, awareness of those habits, because it'll steer your life in a certain direction. So they say that only 3 to 5% of us is actually conscious, about 95 to 97% of us is actually unconscious. And your unconscious mind is just geared, obviously, to save you energy. So whatever becomes repetitive then becomes a program and then drops down and becomes a little duck feet that steers your life, because your unconscious mind is freeing up your energy. So it's just important to be aware of that, because I think we put too much significance on the conscious mind. And there's a saying, I cannot remember who said the saying, but your conscious mind is a very bad master. Your unconscious mind is a very bad master, but a very good servant. That's the right way around. Yeah. So the challenge is that because we don't understand the significance or the volume of what's going on in our unconscious mind steering our mind, we then allow it to have mastery over our life instead of the other way around. So having the awareness of the programs and then obviously mastering them as opposed to the other way around. So taking control of that duck and putting it in the right direction instead of just letting it free paddle, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So here you can see the different roles of the conscious and the unconscious mind. So as Wendy was mentioning there, the unconscious is that automated programming, that conditioning, the habits. So and that happens in your cerebellum. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got the conscious mind, which is our experiences, our knowledge, and our memories. And how do we know what gets filtered through, or how does this filter actually even work? So we've got something in our brains called the reticular activating system. And this is a bundle of nerves that filters out unnecessary information so that the important stuff can get through. Because each moment we're being hit by 11 million bits of information per second. And that's a lot for you to process. So the conscious mind is only able to process that 40 to 120 bits. And what it chooses to filter is because of our, as we mentioned, our memories, our experiences, and our everything that's been conditioned in our mind. So Wendy, can you give us an example of a reticular activating system? Like, how does that show up in reality, or even in a business context? How can that impact innovation?
Well, it goes back to David Allen's quote, right? Is that an optometrist can walk into a room and spot all, everybody wearing glasses, whereas somebody else wouldn't. So it's what are you looking for, and you've got to be aware of what are your biases that are running, because innovation is also about creating something new outside of your own frame. It's about connecting to a stakeholder, connecting to a consumer, understanding what they value and creating that value. But you're not really going to create that value if you are running through your own programs. It's also, are you looking for solutions, or are you looking for problems? What is your frame? Innovation is a very positive frame. It's a very open-minded, a very curious frame. So you've got to question your paradigms, question your beliefs, to be able to then become curious about what is possible, or what actually is out there, or am I thinking of everything that could actually be there? And a more relevant, or not more relevant, just more practical example is just the example I always use of my car. I had a BMW before I had my current car, and I was looking for a new car, and Geraldine's joining us. I was looking for a new car, and my brother said to me, "Why don't you get a Lexus?" And I said, "Do we even actually produce, Lexus, and do we sell Lexus in this country at all?" And he was like, "Of course, there's so many dealerships." And I didn't see. I don't know the plural of Lexus is Lexi, but I didn't see them on the road until I actually bought one. Then all of a sudden I bought one, and to this day I almost laugh at myself, because I see the Lexus SUVs and the sedans, and I literally did not see them until I bought it. So it just shows you that until you place something in your awareness, in your filters, you don't actually see it. So we're not seeing reality. Reality is just perception. And your reticular activating system, what it does is it modulates your perception of reality. And you can see there are sensory systems, how much information we receive per second, but we're only able to process 40 to 120 bits per second. And then which percentage you filter depends on what's in your awareness. Like I didn't see Lexus at all until all of a sudden I bought one. So you don't see pregnant woman until your wife falls pregnant, or until your friend falls pregnant. It's like all of a sudden like magic, I'm looking, there's certain things that I'm shopping for at the moment for Christmas presents for family and friends that I never saw in the shops at all until all of a sudden I'm looking for one. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all over the place. That's your reticular activating system.
Nice. Thank you, Wendy. So Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So if you think about something every day, your brain will start to change. So whatever you think about the most will grow. So if you choose to seek solutions, you will find more solutions. If you choose to focus on problems, you will see more, you'll find more problems. So there's that saying, where attention goes, energy flows. And that's really what the role of the mind is there in innovation. So are we priming ourselves to think creatively, to have new ideas, or are we just repeating the same old thought patterns over and over again? So the first step to personal and professional innovation is consciousness. You cannot transform your thinking for innovation until you are aware of how you think. So this is a part of how awareness, becoming aware of your thinking allows you then to go through this process of transforming how you think. So Wendy, could you talk to us a little bit about being a conscious leader and what that means for innovation, bringing your authentic power, fostering self-inclusion? Where did that fit in to all of this?
Yeah. Well, it's to be able to accelerate innovation within an organization, you need to have an inclusive culture. So there are very many reasons why diversity is critical to innovation. If you think about just when you understand your own neurology and the limitations of our thinking, and you realize the skill sets that need to go into innovating, you need so much diversity to be able to have richer ideas and richer innovation, and to meet all the skills that are required to innovate. But you don't harness that until you have inclusion. So, and that inclusive culture where people feel that they belong, their voices are heard, they are valued, there's reward and recognition and so forth. But the precursor to that is an inclusive leader. So you don't create, because leadership, especially your highest down. So that's why when we do our culture realignment programs, we work with your executive team. Ideally, if we can get to the board, and then your next layer down that reports into them, because they've got your highest influence on a culture. And you want innovation to be emergent and not pursued. So if for innovation to be emergent, you need to have your culture that's correct, that's inclusive. And again, then going back to your inclusive leader is conscious. They are, I mean, the precursor to an inclusive leader is self-inclusion. So once a leader is aware of themselves, they're aware of emotional intelligence is awareness of my thoughts, awareness of my emotions, and the awareness of the thoughts and emotions of others, and be able to regulate them. So if you've got these duck feet that are running and you're not aware of them and you can't regulate them, you don't have emotional intelligence. So it's that self-inclusion, which is an accelerant then for innovation, which is then you have the awareness of your thoughts and emotions, awareness of others, you're able to modulate them, and then you're able to step forward and you step into authentic power. You step into, because you're not held back by your fears, your doubts, your insecurities, which so many leaders are. So once you have that, and I mean, there's that difference between humility and was it arrogance and confidence, where confidence is humility and arrogance is insecurity. So that inclusive leader who's self-inclusive and they've done the deep journey, they've let go of their doubts, fears, and insecurities. They don't validate themselves by success. They don't validate themselves by failure. And that's a massive accelerant for innovation.
So your personality creates your reality. So what Wendy's just described there about the role of the leader in innovation, being self-inclusive and including others, if we want to create that, we need to think of ourselves as a leader. What do we think, act, and feel that is creating our reality? So if you want to change your reality, we can't keep having the same thoughts, making the same choices, and therefore running the same loop of behaviors and experiences. We need to step out of that, have new thoughts, make new choices, and that can lead to new actions and behaviors, experiences, and feelings. So progress is impossible without change, and those who can't change their minds can't change anything. So that's George Bernard Shaw. So we need to understand our pre-programmed conditioning if we want to do something different. If we want to be different, we need to become aware of ourselves, our habits, and our situations. So here's a famous quote by Albert Einstein: "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." So if we can sum up that, what we've just spoken about, the first step is first to understand how you think, then to know your strengths, accept yourself and others, and collaborate strategically. And if we think about design thinking as a framework for innovation, it has all of these different, it has different stages where we do have to unpack what we think and what we believe, understand our cognitive biases in order to think for innovation. Could you just link this up a little bit more for us, Wendy? So where is design thinking, and how does it link in with what we've been speaking about?
Well, design thinking is loosely termed the process of innovation. So it's got 8 different stages. Well, I would say it's got 3 phases, 8 stages. So the 3 phases are inspiration. The second phase is ideation, and then the third is implementation. So it's a design thinking. I mean, It can be confusing because you assume it's a thinking frame, but it's not really, because you require so many skill sets. So your 8 substages, then, if you look at inspiration, which is actually 50% the process of design thinking, and with most organizations, inspiration is actually the most neglected phase. So you've got the 4 different substages are, firstly, you've got to connect with whoever your stakeholder is that you're wanting to innovate for. So you've got to connect. Now you're now connecting. It's not necessarily thinking skills, and that's why the term design thinking can be misleading. You need to be able to have rapport. You need to be able to have emotional intelligence. The second is empathizing. So I've got to then connect with my stakeholder, and again, suspend my paradigms, my programs, my duck feet, and then I empathize with them. I step into their shoes and I understand their world, because my frame is limited and I cannot see through their eyes. So I really want to seek to understand the world through their eyes, hear what they hear, feel what they feel. So that's empathy. And again, that's not a thinking skill. That's actually a skill that's rooted in emotional intelligence. And then you've got to interpret all that information. So you take all that information, you put in your paradigms, your programs aside, you're interpreting all that information, and then you're defining what is the problem. So our brains, we're wired where we just want to solve problems, but we don't understand the problem first. So you want to really understand the problem, which is that there's a 50% of design thinking, which the skills are very much, besides your analyzing and defining, which are more focused, they're very much centered around emotional intelligence, which again speaks to the value of NLP, knowing your programs, inclusive leadership, and so forth. And then you go into your ideation, which is divergent thinking and convergent thinking. And we've forgotten to be playful as adults. So we also limit ourselves from really thinking outside the box. So divergent thinking is just where you give yourself permission to just really be creative and think and go crazy. I mean, when I used to do it with students, I'd be amazed at ideas, like crazy ideas that come up with. And then you can adult when you go into convergent, which is what's technologically feasible, what's financially viable, what's a good business model. And then implementation is also neglected. So your inspiration stage is neglected because we've atrophied a lot of those emotional intelligence skills. We don't understand the value of them in innovation. And then we're not playful enough in divergent thinking. And then in terms of your implementation, we don't prototype quick enough. So we try and make things perfect. And the time you make things perfect, you've lost your market lead advantage. And what you want to do is you want to just have a product that's just viable, get it to market, see what the response is like. And then you reiterate, you test, does it meet the need, and you iterate the process. So each of those stages actually requires a different cognitive skill set. So no one human can fulfill all 8 stages of design thinking. So I know I'm really good at interpreting information, and I'm really good at refining information. So I've got to make sure that I partner with other people and collaborate with other people who meet my gaps in order for me to accelerate innovation, which is why, Kate, I work so well with you, because you've got such a detailed perspective on things, and me as an abstract thinker, that adds so much value, to what we then create together. So understand how you think. Start to question your thinking, and, well, when did you decide that, and why am I feeling this? Or because nobody can make you feel or think a certain way. So start to understand how you think. Know what your strengths are. So I know where my strengths are in design thinking, and then I also know where I need to partner up with people. Accept yourself and accept others, because innovations, it's a frame of curiosity. It's a state of curiosity, sorry. And you're wanting to, when you accept yourself, you're then able to accept others, and you're able to be okay questioning your beliefs and going outside of your confined paradigms, and then collaborate strategically. Is that enough detail, Kate?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Yes, so we've spoken about how we can create the ideal environment for innovation, but what actually hinders it? So let's look a little bit more closely at the brain. So we've got neurorigidity and neuroplasticity. So neurorigidity is when you're only using those pre-wired connections, and you're not learning new things, and your brain stops having new ideas. You're just living out your past memories without having any new experiences and new thoughts. It's that same old pattern. And then on the other side, we've got neuroplasticity. So this is when you're able to learn new things, make new connections, and this is what's really essential for business innovation. So Wendy, how can we develop neuroplasticity?
Well, I suppose, going back to what I said earlier, is to be in a state of curiosity. You know, it's I recently attended a conference in the UAE in Abu Dhabi, and it was centered around innovation. A lot of startups were presenting to investors. And, you know, innovation is similar to authenticity, where I can't tell you I'm authentic. It's you've got to observe my behavior over time and see, is Wendy consistent over time? So the same thing with innovation is that, and you can't say you're innovative. It depends, do you display the behaviors that underpin innovation? And, you know, one of the gentlemen who spoke, he was the founder of a company called Souk, and he's now the CEO, was sold to Amazon. And he's now the CEO of Amazon for MENA. But just in the way he spoke, you could just hear this is a true innovator, really customer centric, really curious, where you're constantly questioning things. You're questioning, as I say, that you're in that state of curiosity. Why am I thinking this way? What about thinking a new way? How else could I serve clients? How else could I add value? So I'd say that, I mean, curiosity, and even it's Otto Schwarmer speaks about it, having a open mind through curiosity, an open heart through compassion, because, you know, innovation is human-centric, it's service-centric. You can walk into a technologically advanced company and they cannot be an innovative company because the concepts are different. Technology is more of a tool, whereas innovation is very service-centric. So compassion, and then courage to try something new, where you don't have a fear of the repercussions or a fear of the failure. So yeah, so I'd say go back to Otto Schwarmer: curiosity, compassion, and courage.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. So how to think for innovation. So I mentioned before, the center for value creation is in the frontal lobe of the neocortex. So this is in contrast with the limbic brain. So the limbic brain is where there's a lot of negative emotions. It's often when we're in fight or flight that we go into our limbic brain. And that's just to kick in those automated responses so that we're able to deal with whatever situation is in front of us. But if we're in that state of heightened stress or anxiety, it's very difficult then to be in that creative center, in that frontal lobe where we have learning, invention, decision making, and yeah, we're able to come up with novel ideas. So just to summarize that, the limbic brain is that survival, that stress state, where you're focusing on what is known, you're looking at limited possibilities, whereas we want to try and move to the frontal lobe, which is that creative center where it's very open focused and there's that all possibilities. So this brings us into NLP. So we've talked about how your beliefs shape your reality and what you think about guides your actions and your attention. But if we think about what actually NLP stands for, we've got the neuro part, which is the nervous system, the brain. So what's happening in every moment is we're taking in information through our 5 senses. And this is getting coded into our brain as a sort of through language and other non-verbal communication. So the thoughts come, the senses come in through our 5, the experience comes in through our 5 senses. It then gets coded as a representation in our brain through pictures, sounds, feelings, tastes, smells, and a self-talk. And then we run that as a program. So Wendy, could you just tell us a little bit more about these 3 different parts, the N, the L, and the P, and how they all link together?
Well, I mean, you described them beautifully. So, I mean, neurolinguistic programming is the language of the mind. So it's understanding how we create those programs, that we receive the world in through our senses. And we had that previous slide where you could see there's 11 million bits of information per second. So we receive this world in through our senses. And then what we do is we create, associations. So you have these associations, and then this becomes a program that you run. And our programs are automatic because it's geared to free up your energy. So we have programs for everything. You have a program for how you know you're loved. You have a program for loving somebody. You have a program for learning. You've got a program for working. You've got all of these, beliefs. And that's why we say, words are, always hear academics say words are social constructs, because a word is held in our neurology differently. Unless you unpack, well, Wendy, what does curiosity mean to you? You're going to have a different definition in your mind. So similarly, again, that similar concept, you would have a sequence, a program for everything. So if you are, so if you unpack somebody, you say, right, so tell me now, if I look at shopping. So I'm a terrible shopper. Because my brain is wired a certain way. So I use my brain's good for business and terrible shopping, because I kind of absorb, especially if the shop is big, I absorb all the items, I analyze the pros and cons, and then I decide which is best. And then I make a purchase, but then I can also loop if it doesn't meet exactly what I'm looking for. So that's a neurological program that I'm running, but we all have the same. So with NLP, so now your program for shopping might be different. I mean, I've got, I say, friends who are just impulse shoppers. They'll just go into a store and they're like, okay, I like the color, I'll buy this. I cannot do that. My brain is wired differently. So if I wanted to, I could actually get an NLP practitioner to elicit my program for shopping, and we could actually rewire it. But again, you only rewire what doesn't serve you. So I could actually get somebody an NLP practitioner to reframe, a decision that I might have made in the past that doesn't serve me anymore, and reframe it to a new decision that actually better serves me. Or I could get, a practitioner to then take away a negative emotion and reframe that negative emotion, because it might be held in my neurology in an unhealthy way. Vish, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. If you had to reprogram one of these bad behaviors or down a particular behavior, how long does something take to reprogram? Or what skills are required?
So, look, it's there are many different types of coaching, and it's important that everybody, analyzes what type of coach they want and meets with them and checks, does it resonate. I'm a big fan of NLP coaching, particularly the methodology we use, which is actually the company has got a headquarters in Australia and in the United States. It's a Tad James company. So you instantaneously can reframe a program. However, remember that neurons that fire together, wire together. So in your neurology, everything, I mean, you've got these electrical currents that are running, these thoughts and these programs are running. So you can have an NLP session with the practitioner, and they can able to reframe a program to one that better serves you. It's instant, but you're still going to have almost like, I assume when you remove a limb, I haven't had any removed, where you have ghost limbs. So you're still going to have, because you've had that neural path running, so you're still going to have that ghost neural path running. So then it's up to you to, through consciousness and repetition, reinforce the new beliefs so that it becomes as strong as the previous belief. So that goes back to Dr. Caroline Leaf, who's a neuroscientist. She's African, but she's based in Canada. And what she said is, you can, whatever you choose to think, you are, through frequency, it becomes a program. So it's instant, but it still requires consciousness. You can also, if somebody doesn't want to go to an NLP practitioner or doesn't want to have that session, journaling is also fantastic. So journaling is a really great way, especially if you're free writing, to connect the conscious and unconscious mind. So you can just, if there's a particular area in your life that's a challenge and you're trying to resolve it, you can just free journal and you'll get insights. Your unconscious mind will bring insights. And then if you've got a strong enough will, you can actually say, no, I'm going to choose to believe this instead. And I'm going to focus on that. So again, I'm giving you all the options. I'm not saying just go to an NLP practitioner.
No. Thanks. And I think it's about choice, right? Choice to do something differently, and then some brain gym to keep those choices at the forefront of your mind. Thanks.
Correct. And that's why consciousness is so important. It's having that awareness, that emotional intelligence of awareness of my thoughts and my emotions, and having a state of curiosity about them. Why am I feeling this way? Nobody can make you angry. Nobody can make you sad and so forth. So it's to go like, okay, I'm feeling angry. Why? Or I'm scared. Why?
Yeah.
What am I afraid of? Because also, I mean, fear is a massive inhibitor to innovation. So, but if I can create consciousness of what specifically am I afraid of, then you can go, hold on a second. Okay, that's a belief that might have served me when I was, 5 years old, or might have served me when I was 10 or 20, whenever I created that belief. But you know what? I choose a new one now. And you can, through pure will and force of your own will, you can shift it. Or, as I say, you can get coaching.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's like this quote here by Dr. Norman Deutsch is, as you keep reiterating the new neural pathways, that's how you change your mind. And so you spoke a little bit about how an individual could change their beliefs or emotional state in one session. What about a team, like a leadership team? How long would it take for them to change their way of thinking as a collective to become more innovative?
Well, and again, one of the biggest challenges with the work that we do, especially with corporates, is that it's a do with, not a do to, and somebody's got an appetite to change. That's why normally we know that if we don't have the full support of the chairman of the board and the CEO, it's going to be quite challenging to be able to shift that culture. And as part of the programs that we run when we're wanting to transform a culture for innovation, we run workshops which are almost group coaching sessions that are structured a certain way with the team, but we also insist that they have to do one-on-one sessions. So those one-on-one sessions are for accelerating that executive's consciousness. So in terms of time frame, the work that we do is based on spiral, Dr. Don Beck and Chris Cohen's spiral dynamics, which is based on Dr. Claire Graves' value level. Most organizations operate at value level 4 and 5, and authentic innovation naturally emerges at value level 7. So when an executive has a midlife crisis, and companies can also have collective midlife crises because they're collective of humans, it's normally from when you're shifting from 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. So, and each value level takes about 6 to 12 months to be able to shift. So we know when we do a program, they sign an SLA for minimum of 18 to 24 months, because we know that if you're a 4 or 5 and we're going to get you to 7, we almost need to hold that space for you to be able to shift your neurology over time, because it's a compound process that merges over time. Vish?
Okay, so I mean, I'm with you, and I think I've lived the experience where you need time to change culture within an organization. How do you deal with the conundrum of frequent leadership changes in the space of culture change, right? Because in the modern world, you can get a CEO that's, an 18-month, 24-month type CEO and moving on, or a exec leader or a senior leader. That rate of change is being high of recent and gets faster, right? So very difficult to garner support sometimes to run the full length of program required for human nature to take its course and change. How do you deal with those conflicting timeframes?
Yeah. A great question, and you're 100% correct in terms of change of leadership. It depends on the character of the individual coming on board. So, for example, we've just finished a really great program with the fintech company that's owned by RMB. Fantastic success, 18-month program. The CEO and the chairman really bought into it, so we had their full support and sponsorship. Now, what would happen if a new CEO comes on board who's very different to that CEO? What happens to all the work that we have done? Especially because now they're still in even 18 months, and even though the work is solid, it's still infancy. You've got to really sort of support it and compound it over time. Then yes, it can absolutely the culture can regress. If they don't display the right values, if they don't understand the principles and so forth, if they're not committed themselves, then they say they're not in alignment, it will regress.
Well, where the question is born from, I'm working with a group where we're looking at how to make things sustainable, and to do that, it needs to be systemic. You need to build systems that kind of survive beyond people, in a way, if that makes any sense. So that's why I'm kind of trying to get a grasp of this leadership change frequency to changing behaviors and changing culture. How do you make it systemic and sustainable?
Yeah, that's, ideally, you're not going to regress completely to the beginning of the program, but you are, if you've got a new CEO who's fundamentally different, who might have a very autocratic leadership style, which is contrary to the psychological safety that you need for innovation, you are going to stimulate innovation. I think what it sounds like in terms of the system, that's a very evolved way of being. And most companies are not there yet. Ideally, that's what I mean. A lot of the work that we do is we actually, our intent is to break down silos and get all departments to recognize their contribution towards the company's vision and towards the company's goals, to get them to understand their roles and responsibilities, to really break down those silos and create those systems. But again, a company who truly operates in systems, that's very advanced. I've seen very few companies who are able to do that successfully.
Yep. No, fair enough. Without digressing from your point, the issue we're dealing with is called integrated operations. How do you break down silos? How do you merge across the different silos for common goals and shared success? So that's what we're grappling with at the moment. So yeah, quite relevant in a different sphere.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part of the work that we do, is getting the execs all around the boardroom. And exactly that. Once we've unpacked your vision, purpose, mission, you unpack your values. Okay, well, and we almost get them to visualize. We get Post-its and sticky notes and everything. We actually get them to visualize how does each department work together to create that and start to be more collaborative. So 100%. It's just, could a company, once you've mastered that system, if you had to get an autocratic CEO on board, would that company regress? I'm of the opinion I still think it would. Not completely, but I still think it would.
Yep, no, fair. Thanks.
So just to wrap up today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about the NLP communication model, because this kind of brings everything we've been speaking about together. So the NLP communication model looks like this. We have that external event, which we take in through our 5 senses. It's filtered through our reticular activating system, that filter that looks at our experiences, our memories, and it deletes, distorts, and generalizes information. That gets stored in our brains as an internal representation, which determines our state of being and how we feel, which then influences our behavior. And we have different brainwave development at different stages of our lives. Could you link this, Wendy, to the NLP communication model and talk us through this briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. My brain's still on our conversation with Bush, though. I'm like lost in thought thinking about that. It's and just sorry, one thing just to clarify is that there's a different innovation as an output of a culture. I think you would still have the system. I think if you're able to successfully break down silos and create a system, I think that system would still be retained, irrespective of your leadership, if that becomes the programmed way of operating, though innovation would be stifled, because innovation rests on psychological safety. So innovation is cultural, whereas a system more is a way of operating. Does that make a little bit more sense?
I think you're right there, Wendy, and it's about that inclusivity, safety culture, safe place to go and try things without repercussion, right? That's how you keep innovation spurned on. So yes, the leadership change to an autocratic will change that. Get that? I think you're right. But I think if it's truly systemic and the leaders are well advanced in their behavior and thinking, correct, the system could still win. The people could still win. It's a funny thing, 100%. Right? People, yeah. So safety numbers.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you're able to, successfully break down, those silos and operate as a system and become a program, and as long as your leadership are at least able to support that culture to a certain degree, because part of that inclusion is that belonging, safety, I'm rewarded, I'm valued, I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm part of decisions, I get information and so forth, then yeah.
Yeah, oh, cool. Let's keep going.
So, and then, we right at the end. So this is just our brainwave development. So we actually have developed programs before we develop a consciousness. So your consciousness is normally developed between the ages of around about 6 and 9. So you can see there delta, which is 0 to 2, is deep hypnosis. Theta is 2 to 6, and then we start to go into alpha. High beta is high stress. So how they say when you're wanting to innovate, you're wanting to go from beta down into either low beta or alpha, so that you can obviously open up your mind. But going back to your brainwave development, so you don't have most of us. Plato said, "Give me a boy for the first 7 years of his life, and I'll show you the man." Because a lot of our programming is acquired from the ages of 0 to 7. That's why the rich, they say, again, as a generalization, because there are always anomalies, the rich get rich, the poor get poor, the poor stay poor, because you're getting your programs from your environment, how your father treats your, your mother and so forth, or, what the family belief is on learning or whatever it is. So you as a human are created with all of these programs, and the programs are largely created when you are in a state of hypnosis. So you have no discernment. You can't be like, okay, well, I'm going to choose that one, but I'm not going to choose that one until you start to develop your critical faculty, which again is around about the ages of 6 or 9. So that's just, as I say, that's why we have so many of these biases that we're actually unaware of because of these programs that we've actually acquired. And there again, it's just, you can see there 5% is conscious, 95% is unconscious. So our habits, our behaviors, our programs, largely unconscious. And then, as I say, creativity happens in your conscious mind.
So NLP has a variety of different tools for helping us to access these subconscious programmings. And we often, one of a key tool we use is timeline therapy, where we look at where do these programs actually come from and what is the first event that created this limiting belief or this negative emotion, which is generally between the ages of 0 to 7, because that's when these programs are formed.
Yeah. And just as I say, that process alone of that's what we do in the one-on-one. So the one-on-one is a lot of it's cognitive behavioral therapy, it's NLP timeline, it's business coaching, but it's the intent is to get the executive to have conscious unconscious integration and to go back to maybe limiting decisions or emotions that are triggering them into that 0 to 7 years. And what happens is through that process, the awareness that they get is greatly empowering and greatly enlightening, because they go, oh, hold on a second, that's when I believe that. Okay, well, this is how I'd like to reframe it now. And that just that process alone accelerates emotional intelligence. So we are 12:45. But if you have any questions, Geraldine, it's good to see you. Well, good to see you in the room. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask us any questions at all.
Thanks, Wendy. I think the session has been really quite informative and great to hear you both. Very insightful as well. Thank you very much. Good questions, by the way.
From Vish.
Yes, most certainly.
Vish was before going down under, he was the CEO of Grindrod Terminals.
Okay. Yeah. That's why there's
the
a lot of
questions.
No, really informative, and it's good to know that you guys are having these sessions. Makes us aware as well, importance of culture and organization. So great to be part of this discussion.
Thanks, Geraldine. Lovely to have you with us. Geraldine comes from Aspen.
Okay,
previously.
Cool. Pharmaceuticals. There you go.
Yeah.
So you don't need drugs then, right? Because you've got it all inside.
NLP is the way to go.
That's cool. Wendy and Catherine, from my side, I think it was great. Particularly it was to re-jog the memory. I asked you the stupid question, what was NLP? And I ran the whole thing with my team for a while, right? So it was a good memory jogger to get into the theory again, Wendy. So, and Catherine, it was good to be conscious about the things we did before. So I think there's room for it, and good to connect. And I will continue to stay with you guys, and let's see how it goes over the next period in these sessions. But I think the integrated ops one is an interesting foray in terms of how do you create an innovative space. I hooked up with a bunch of guys here that are looking to say, well, productivity's dropped over time and complexity is increased, and there's a whole bunch of technology, but why has productivity dropped? And it's about silo behavior, where there's no congruency between the aims of the organization because it's down to a particular leader or a group and so forth. How do you break through those things? And I think, I've been fortunate in my life before Grindrod as well as in Grindrod. We ran a fairly collaborative environment system, information share, creating space for people to do stuff and innovate. So we had some good outcomes, good fortunes, and we did well as a business and the prior businesses. So I met this group, and it resonates with myself. So you can think, well, how do we do this? But I might get them to hook up with you guys, Wendy, because this stuff is all important in terms of that systemic thing. You know, whilst you might talk almost esoterically around something that's kind of high level, the reality is the systems we're looking at needs the brain, needs people, needs thinking. So I could see the linkage here in the conversation. So it got me. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. And you're correct, though. It's such an irony that productivity is declining. And I really do. I mean, I don't think email served us very much. I think email actually declined us further, right? There's so much. I mean, if you think we spend so much time in meetings and, in emails and so forth, and you've got people duplicating tasks and, pushing things away, that if you can just get the system right, get the system to resolve things, you've got to touch things far less. So I think we're touching things too much. And at least one thing we've experienced in the companies that we work with is, so the inclusion theory is fascinating theory, but it's a lot deeper than what people actually assume. And we just link it too much to diversity, and especially in the African context. But a part of inclusion is empowerment. So and part of empowerment is your delegations of authority and your decision mandates. So never mind breaking down the silos and getting the system to work better. We spend a lot of time with them unpacking their DOAs, unpacking their decision mandates and so forth. So people are empowered to make decisions, because what I find is that in corporate, there's a fear of making decisions. And this fear of whether it's an illusion or it's, become cultural, and that slows things down. So nobody wants to make a decision. So you got like 20 people in email, and you don't want to make a decision. You're wasting 20 people's time to read that email. Just, do what you need to get done.
So Wendy, it does come back to culture, right? I think as a leader, you got to stop this scenario where there's 20 people on an email. Yeah. You either go one-on-one or one with a CC to 2 or 3 people where there's relevance, right? So reduce the noise, send it to a singular person to make a decision or whatever. The other people are not allowed to come in on CC. It's just for information. So I think that's there. The other one that just caught my attention whilst you were talking was Netflix, No Rules. And I think that was a phenomenal read about empowerment and allowing teams to do stuff and having the safety net to do things without fear. And if you could capture that behavior or that safety net environment in a corporate, difficult, but if you can, I think there's room to really flourish as an organization. Yeah, but
100%.
It needs maturity, huge maturity. Correct. As a leader.
Correct, especially as say your top leadership. And what I love about Netflix, Reed Hastings, is that they've also got a policy that if you don't fit, because a culture is a collective of behaviors which is underpinned by what you value, right? So if you don't fit the culture of the environment, they give you notice. So we assume they're so warm and fuzzy and human centric, which they are, but they also preserve their culture. And they say, what, Vish, it's not you, it's me, we're going to part ways. But they do it human-centrically. They give you 3 months. They say, here's 3 months notice. It's not working out. Because if you have too many people that are on breach of the values, you're going to corrode the culture.
Yeah, correct. That's absolutely right. So it's a tough world, right? And you've got to be strict about the things you want to hold dear to you. The culture is important, right? So that's true. You exit people as, when we started with this bell curve and 80, 20, 10, and you're moving 10% out of the organization, I thought it was crazy at a point in time. But I think once you start realizing, when you get rid of deadwood, dead thinking, the laggards, it empowers the others to continue pushing through, and you get productivity back where it should, because people start enjoying the work. They start worrying about the negative, and the guys that are not contributing, people are not contributing. So
yeah, I mean, it's greatly demoralizing to perform if somebody's not performing and there's no repercussions. But as much as, there's certain values. One of the things we do is we check on what are the values in an organization, and do they support innovation, because innovation rests on certain values. But a great value, besides the human-centric ones, is excellence. So in excellence is also, there is a certain, not autocraticness, there's a certain strictness about it. it means that you've got to always be doing better and performing so you can't allow complacency. Innovation doesn't come in a complacent environment. It rests on, excellence of wanting to always add more value, do things a little bit better all the time, which again goes back to performance management. And another thing that I would say, and we work with some really amazing big corporates, that's lacking in organizations, is leadership do not understand performance management. And they think it's an autocratic process, which it's, a punitive process when it's not a punitive process. And they think it resides in human resources when it doesn't. And it becomes compliance. You got to get your score for your bonus and that's all nonsense. Performance management is your job as a leader. Now, because for me to get the best out of you as a human that I'm working with, I've got to sit with you and go, okay, Vish, do you actually understand your job function? And where your challenges and, how you're going to achieve these goals. Let's strategize together. And then I explain to you, these are your parameters within which you can operate. This is where you have autonomy to make decisions. Go forth and go wild within this. We leaders, I think, don't understand those kind of leadership skills. Very lacking in very good organizations, very lacking that one-on-one clarity, strategic time.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a lack of training, Wendy. You don't know what you don't know. And people often get through on the merits of technical prowess into leadership roles, and they're not equipped as leaders or managers. And then it's a downward spiral, right? And then you overlay, and I'm just thinking out loud here, you then overlay a performance management system with not realizing the tools you need to manage people, right? Then it becomes creating a system, and you're going to spit out numbers, and it's going to be bonus related, et cetera, et cetera. And how do you give feedback? How do you give honest, authentic feedback? Doesn't need to be structured twice a year, right? Or six. It's an ongoing thing.
It should be fortnightly, as far as I'm concerned. Fortnightly sessions, And you touched on another thing there, feedback. It's amazing how many leaders are uncomfortable having uncomfortable conversations. And then you've got a staff member not performing. And it's like, but you haven't told him he's not performing. Like, you haven't sat with him. You haven't given him clarity. He's not empowered. Like, how do you think he's useless if you haven't had that time and they don't want to have that conversation with them?
Again, I was fortunate in Greenwood. We had a session where we learned to give feedback. And it's a simple thing about asking permission of the person you want to give feedback to. Can I give you feedback?
Yes.
Hugely powerful. And then you use yourself, you frame it from, this is how I feel. Changes the whole process of giving feedback, progressing.
Now, what you've just mentioned, that's one of we've got an EQ training. So that's incorporated in the EQ training, but that's exactly it. So all these new skills that are required of leaders to lead in this new, evolving, complex time, because you need to create systems to solve problems. The hierarchy linear structure is just not going to work. We're going to have massive extension in companies in the next 5 years, like most of our traditional corporates, I think in 5 years' time, especially as AI accelerates. So you need to be able to have that structure that then becomes a system. But to do that, you need to have these new skills, which are emotional intelligence, paradigm shifting. And I don't think we're investing enough into leaders in those skills.
And that's in an environment where we come up with a death scroll on a device and people are disengaged. So you're going to be asking of people more than they ever have been, and they're not in that frame of engaging with people. They're happy with getting lost in their devices. It's a tough world. You've been in work forever, Wendy. Hope you plan on retiring sooner than later.
Well, what we're wanting to do, so Kate's our learning specialist. She's amazing. I'm so abstract. I'm a bit of a nutty professor. So Kate really sort of brings me down to earth and she structures things beautifully. And we in talks at the moment, we want to figure out, so we've been building out our learning management system so that all of our programs are now becoming automated on our learning management system, which means that we can teach. So if you want to run them in Australia, we can teach you how to run them, and then you can run them. The content is there. But what we want to do now is also create an app. But the idea is in infancy at the moment. So we're very far away from, it's so almost like a Duolingo app and we want to have everything that we do put into an app kind of form to accelerate this opening up one's paradigm, right? And that state of curiosity and compassion but we want to do it for free. So we want to do it as a free app, but obviously you'd have advertising, and then you'd be payable versions for companies or whatever it is. So that's the idea.
If you can achieve what you want to, the app is the tool. The detail in the tool should be a game. People play and learn. You learn through play. So here's an idea for you guys. If you can think through how do you get your messaging through a game, in the app.
Correct. Yeah. So if you want to join the project in the infancy, who knows? The World Economic Forum did say about 2030, the largest company in the world would be an edutech company. So who knows? It could just be us.
Yeah. Then I should join, right?
Yeah. But it's about, I find too many humans, I believe we've all got God-given skills, gifts and abilities. And our job is to, as I've said, in previous webinars, and that is to figure out what they are and then to help other people figure out, what theirs are. Because I think we live in a world where we wait to be emancipated. We wait for a leader to save us, or we wait for a pastor of a church, or we wait for or politician to save us. But we need to learn to save ourselves, which is when you start to understand how your mind works, and you step out of that. That's really empowering. You go full into your creative potential and power. I don't think we've touched the tip of the iceberg of our power as a species to create. Hopefully we figure it out before AI, Anyway.
Cheers. Good.
Okay. I've got a 1 o'clock, so I need to hop off. It was awesome to connect, Vish. Thanks so much for hopping on. It was really good fun. Thanks, Kate, for leading the conversation. And thanks, Geraldine, for joining us. It was lovely to have you with us.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers,
See you next
Good
time.
stuff, guys. Take care.
Bye.
All the best.
Bye.
Hey.
Cheers, Gerald.
Thank
All the
you.
best for Christmas, New Year. Ciao, ciao.
Yes, you too. Bye.